So our artist today is Sarah Koetsier. See, I said it right, just for the recording. It's an exhibition called Be Still and Know. It was work that was first shown in 2016 in Truro Cathedral, and it was made as a commemoration piece for families who had lost children at a young age or who were stillborn. And every year at this time, we invite artists to reflect on the theme of the incarnation. It's our only kind of specifically, Christian or religiously themed exhibition, actually. And we do this partly to invite artists to have a real look at the subject through a fresh lens, and partly to counter the usual nativity themed tropes that we see at this time of year, or even avoidance of the subject completely. So that's something we've been doing for a number of years. And this year, obviously with this theme, we were aware that, it's a particularly sensitive theme to address, but we believe that Sarah's work respectfully honours those who have suffered bereavement. Sarah is a ceramicist artist. She's a graduate of Falmouth University. She was born in Canada but has lived abroad ever since. She currently lives in Strathkinnis. I'm sure when she lived in Canada that she would have where's Strathkinnis? But she's ended up in Strathkinnis, just outside of St Andrews. And she lives there with her husband John, who's a painter. She has a studio in the East Neuk of Fife, where she makes a range of hand-thrown functional and decorative porcelain pots. So today, Sarah will be sharing her thoughts from the exhibition Be Still and Know, as well as providing us with insights and ideas and practical skills involved in her ceramic craft. As always, there's going to be a time for discussion at the end. And so if you have any questions that come up during Sarah's talk, you can just put them in the chat and then we'll come to them at the end, or there's a small enough number of us just to open up discussion as well. And I think most people know the kind of Zoom etiquette, just to put your mic on mute so that there's no background noise while Sarah's speaking. So let's just welcome Sarah now. Thanks, Sarah. I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So as Kelly said, I am based in Strathkinnis in the East Neuk. Primarily, I work in clay. I work in porcelain. For this particular project and a lot of my university career, I had the opportunity to work in so many different mediums. This one is glass, cast bronze, and plaster. So we were asked, I was in my third year of university. We were asked to go to Truro Cathedral and respond to something that we found there. So we spent a day there looking around, taking photos, asking questions. And in old cathedrals, there is so much to see. There's stained glass windows, there's the architecture, there's old books and Bibles and hymnals, and there's endless things to explore. And I found in a cabinet in one of the side chapels a book and a poem about babies in that specific congregation who had been stillborn, or children that had died when they were very young, and their names and birth dates and death dates were all recorded in the book. And then there was a poem and some other things that went along with it. And I had looked through, I saw that kind of at the beginning because it was at the start of the cathedral, little tour. And I thought, we don't really ever talk about stillbirth ever. I don't, in my knowledge, know of anyone in my family, in my friends, in my, various relations who has ever said anything about that. And then carry on through the rest of the cathedral and thought, it just kept getting pulled back to that I have no experience in losing a child in stillbirth. I have no children. I have heard nothing about it. Like it's this subject that I don't think you talk about until you've experienced it, and then even then, it's within such a internal thing. And I felt like that shouldn't be the case. There should be some way, some response, some reflection, some, I don't know, honoring that those families and women should be able to, I don't know, some expression of something. So I kind of thought about how best to do that. It is so sensitive. And because I have no experience with it, I felt honored to be able to do something with it, but like it needed to be sensitive to families and that sort of thing. So that's the finished piece in that picture. And this is it. Sorry, the photos aren't great, but this is it in that side chapel. I decided to exhibit it across from the cabinet that has the book and the poem in it. The piece itself is interactive in a way. So it was made for people who have experienced losing a child or a baby. It was made for them to, it was a process so they could, the central bowl, that central glass bowl was filled with water. And then there was the bronze ladle and the plaster cups or vessels. So people were invited to ladle water from the larger bowl into the plaster vessels, and the plaster vessels would then suck the water in, and then it would eventually evaporate out. So it was like it was the process within the piece of that happening, the moving water, and then the evaporation back out, and then I hoped a process within the person of memory and release and honoring those family members. So that's kind of, this was the poem. The picture's not clear. I'll read it to you. It wasn't, this was me in my university days with my little tiny camera. I'll read it to you. It's, you can take with it what you will. It's, yeah, I'll read it if I can actually see it. I'll lend you for a little time a child of mine, he said, for you to love the while she lives and mourn for when she's dead. It may be 6 or 7 years or 22 or 3, but will you, till I call her back, take care of her for me? Oh, sorry, it just affects me so much and I don't, anyway. She'll bring her charms, be glad. I don't know if I can keep reading it, but you understand. It's this. It was a beautiful poem, and it was right next to that book of names, and obviously, it in some way affected me enough to, yeah, make a piece about it. That's the kind of piece in situ. There you go. That in. I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I made it. So moving on from the conceptual side, you're welcome to ask me any more questions. I've probably left some things out that I just can't remember. Yeah, ask me questions at the end, but I'll talk a little bit about how I made it. Like I said, at university, there was an endless supply of equipment and like really interesting tools and materials to choose from and use. I chose plaster because, like I said, it has that ability to suck the water in and evaporate back out again. I turned all the vessels on a plaster lathe, like a wood lathe, but with plaster instead. So each piece was turned individually, and then so that each one was different. That was something that I really wanted, was that I wasn't casting the same piece over and over, so that when someone was coming to that table, every single vessel was different. There wasn't two the same. And then the bigger bowl was glass cast, and that's quite a process. So it goes from the plaster model that you lathe, and then you have to make a mold of that plaster model, a silicon mold, which you then pour wax into. And that photo on the right is of the wax model. And then you make a plaster mold of that. That one on the left, plaster mold of that. And then you melt the wax out, and then you put glass in and put it in the kiln. And then hopefully at the end of it all that work, you have a beautiful bowl, which actually wasn't the case. But in the end of mine, half of it didn't cast. But that's just the way it goes. It's like this, and you end up spending a month working on this, and then you don't have another month to be able to make another one. So that's just the way of the process and the projects. In a similar way, the bronze is made. So you make a model, and then you make you attach it to the wax. And I can't even remember, sprue, I think that's what it's called. And you cast it I had to go get it cast. I couldn't do it myself. I could cast the glass myself and not the metal. And then that's what the glass comes out like. So it's on the left-hand side. So it's kind of covered in plaster, and you end up having to polish it all down and grind it until it's all smooth and perfect. And part of what I loved about this process of making this is that I knew that at the end of it, there was some beautiful use for it in some way. Like all the work that I put into it could be, I don't know, someone else would be able to not use it. That's not the right word. In a way to reflect and and that's the final piece. That's kind of the end of talking about that specific project. Please, if you have any other questions, ask them. But I thought I'd show you just a little bit about what I do now. It is quite different. When I left university, you leave, and then there's kind of no workshops and technicians and all the things that you were used to. And so I kind of focused in on one area, and that just ended up being clay. And then since then, I left university, I bought a wheel, taught myself to throw, and then I've kind of been throwing for the last 5 years, I think it is now. Let me see, how do I exit this? And I'll show you what I do now. This is what I do now. So I say functional and
Sarah,
because,
you're still screen sharing that. Are you wanting to screen share your website now?
Yeah. Oh, am I not anymore?
Yeah, so you need to just stop screen share with that,
okay.
and then
start it again.
Screen share, and then it'll be, you'll select your website.
I see.
Yeah,
I think
that's it. Perfect.
That, you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll make it full screen, and then that will be better. This is what I do now. Now you can see it. I say functional and decorative. My pieces are, I don't make mugs and cereal bowls and egg cups, although I admire potters who do. I can't make the same thing over and over again. I can't do it. It's not in me to do. So my pots each one is different. There are rarely two the same. They often have a mountain theme, and I can't tell you exactly where that's come from. I'd like to think that it's because I grew up in I had spent the first 7 years of my life in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies, and then have since moved to Scotland. But I think it also comes down to the lines. They're just such beautiful lines that you get in rocks and mountains. And I love color and expressive brushstrokes, which you'll see on, if pretty much all my pots. It's rare that they don't have something splattered on them. So that's kind of what I do. My studio, I've only recently moved studios, so I'm in now. I was in a garage for about 4 years. And if you're a potter, most potters will have spent some number of years in a garage. And I've just moved into an actual studio, which is so nice to have like a purposeful space with a sink and radiators, the things that are luxuries. So this is what I do now. And that kind of concludes what I have to say. If anyone has any questions or anything about the piece or what I do now, please ask away.
Also, Sarah, while people are maybe putting questions in the chat, or if someone uses the reactions, put your hand up and then I can see that. But could you maybe just show us through different parts of the collection, just on your website as well?
Yeah, so I do this range, which I call my brush and mountain pot. So they're my like full color, really fun to make. Each pot though takes about, you think that the brush strokes are like this, and the splatters are, but the brush strokes are actually really controlled on these ones. And they take about 20 minutes to make each pot because I'll draw on them very carefully and then brush and paint. Whereas the cobalt range, that's the one that like the brush strokes are so much more fluid. I can kind of splatter it around and not worry too much about the placement of them. Because the cobalt, it just melts so well into the glaze and the edges they just get really soft. Whereas the underglaze that I use for all the other colors it's quite a bit more like harsh on the edges. So I'm a bit more careful with where I place that. But yeah, these are.
Sarah, can you talk a bit, well, two things. One is you talked about different glazes and so on in terms of how you've developed. So when you say your pot takes 20 minutes, that's the painting.
That's purely the decorating.
Yeah. And obviously in the 5 years, how have you kind of discovered, maybe through investigation, different glazes and what works as well? There seems to be a coherency and consistency to what we're seeing, but has there been kind of a significant learning curve in getting to this point? And then the other thing that I've noticed in your work, there's often these almost kind of gouges that are taken out. That seems to be quite a feature of your work as well. So that was kind of two questions in terms of practical things.
Yeah. So I decided to learn to throw because at university they didn't teach us throwing. They taught us slip casting, hand building, all of that sort of thing with clay. And I left university and had really wanted to learn. It's a challenge, and it was a real challenge. And it was a lot of YouTube videos. And then I volunteered with a local potter in Falmouth for about 4 months. And it was in the first 6 months of me learning, I didn't keep a single pot. I threw it and I reclaimed it, and I threw it and I reclaimed it, and nothing was kept because you have to throw and throw and throw and throw and throw and center and center and center and center. Like you have to do so many repetitive tasks to learn to do it. And I thought I won't keep any of this because in the end, I won't even like it later. Like it will be a purely learning experience. And I think, as you can tell with the forms of the vessels, they actually started on that project for like the forms of these. That project, that one that I did at the Truro Cathedral, that one kind of started the form of a lot of the ones that I make now. And I don't know why I like that one in particular. Porcelain lends itself so well to that shape. I don't know, smooth and it's easy. No, not easy. It works really well to get sharp edges. Kelly, I can't remember all the questions that you asked. The carved out bits. Oh, that's the other thing. I love texture. So color and texture. The insides of a lot of those pots are glazed with a clear glaze, and the outsides are left unglazed. So you get the difference in the textures, and you can escalate that by carving out. So when you feel a pot, and I feel like this is what I've been at a fair all weekend, and people, especially now, are afraid to touch the pottery. And I'm like, please don't be afraid. You have to touch the ceramics. There's something about them that you need to feel them. And that carving out is like that next level. You can get so much texture on it. Yeah. What else? You said something else.
Yeah, no, that was the two main. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Was there anyone else? Oh, there are four.
Yeah. Well, there's so Rosie is just saying that she'd seen you work at a fair, Bowhouse Farmers Market, and she's just complimenting the work, that work, but also the work that you did at university as well. Question from Shona about the Be Still and Know work. Just saying it's so meaningful and beautiful. Have you considered sharing it with Sands? Now, Shona, you might, I don't know if you know what that is.
I don't know what Sands
No, so Shona, do you mind just explaining what that Sands is?
Yeah, SANS is the Stillbirth and Neonatal Death Society, Support Society. Right. Anyone who loses a baby or a small child would be referred to that. Oh. And we have connections with them through alternatives. But yeah, I think they'd be interested in that work.
One of the things that when Cully said I was able to show this work somewhere, it's been in a box for 5 years. And I find that really sad because, even for the piece after it that I made after it, that one was about grief. They were both they were meant to be interacted with or to have a purpose besides sitting in a box. So when I had the chance, when Cully said, could you exhibit it? I thought, this is wonderful. It gets out, someone else sees it and they get to experience it because that's what it was made for. So I would love to share it with them and connect with them in that way. Because yeah, I'd love for it to be somewhere and be doing something.
We can maybe chat after. We'll see what we can.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Shona, for bringing that up. I think that is really helpful, isn't it, to know that this could be shown for the benefit of other people as well. Mm-hmm. There's a question here from Katie Nellis. She said she loves seeing the process of the Be Still project. Just wondering where you sell your current work. Obviously, you said you were at fairs this weekend, and I know that wasn't booked in when you said, yes, I can do the talk on the 12th, and then you've got a fair as well. And then she says, if you prefer experimenting with glazes, etc., or creating concepts, or is it a combination? And she really liked how your exhibition was interactive too. And we know, obviously, putting them in Nomas, it couldn't be interactive, so it took away that aspect of it. And then trying to curate it, because I think maybe Owen might have some photos at the end of what it looks like, because we had the ladle in the first window, and then all the pots in the next three, and then the glass vessel with the water. And it really struck me that if actually I was speaking to Andrew about this when we saw it last Sunday, and just thinking, how could we expect anyone to know what this work was about, without any background information, which led me then into just thinking about that with, I suppose, any art form. But the fact that the ladle's in one window and then there's a vessel with water in the other maybe could give a clue, but not necessarily that you would know that each plaster vessel represented someone who had died. So but yeah, I'll let you come back to Katie's question about the experimenting with glazes. What do you prefer, that or creating concepts?
Mm-hmm. So experimenting with glazes, that is a skill that I have yet to properly explore and learn. I think when you come into ceramics, you think clay. Okay, there's like, porcelain, stoneware, earthenware. I can get that. But glazes, there is just endless possibilities, which kind of overwhelms me a little bit. So I've generally stuck to underglazes, which are the colors, oxides, which are kind of another realm of color, and then I've just stuck with a clear glaze. Now that I'm in my new studio, I'm hoping to do a bit more experimenting with glazes because there's more space and there's more ability to be able to do that. But it is a lot of chemistry, which I'm not great at. So a lot of that sort of thing to consider. But I'd love to do more of that. Creating concepts, that's something that I was so good at and had free range of in university. And then leaving university, making money, there's concept, like there's multiple things that you're juggling after you're leaving. In terms of like purely conceptual or work more like the one, the Be Still and Know one, that one where I would never sell that, versus the work that I do now where it is very much for sale. I would love to be able to do work more conceptual side maybe in the future. Right now my ceramics is part-time. I don't do it full-time. And I love what I'm doing right now, just making lots of pots and different shapes and experimenting with just the colors and the placement of things and the carving and the textures and all of that. Where do I sell my work? So I sell through galleries and some shops in the kind of local area and Scotland generally. And then I sell through fairs, and then I'm terrible at selling online, but I am hoping, I know I look young, like I should be really cool at, and good at selling online shop, all of that. I am no, so bad at that. So I am trying to set an online shop up, which will probably be ready in the spring. We'll see. It's a lot to do. It's especially with work where each piece is individual, because it means photographing and measuring and listing everything separately. But definitely something I need to do. Everything seems to be moving online.
It was interesting because I was chatting with you, Sarah, with a student. It was when I was doing the residency at DJ CAD, and I was working with kind of students who were looking for placements, and there were students interested. You told me about all the work that goes into documenting the work to put it online, and that happened obviously during with lockdown. It was you couldn't go to fairs anymore, so it was okay. Well, how do I sell this? How do I sell this work? And there's a question in here from Liz, but just before we come to that, how did you find that? Could you benefit from someone else coming in? I think you'd said that, of course, then it's about, okay, well, how do you pay someone to do that work? But recognizing that that's a lot of all the background work that stops, especially if you're doing this part-time, that a time when you could be in actually throwing a pot, making the glazes, and actually enjoying the viscerality of that.
I'd so much rather be making than photographing and listing.
Yeah. But also that you would go to fairs, and there's a kind of interaction, relational aspect of that as well, which I would imagine that's something that you enjoy too. So how did you survive in lockdown when you couldn't go to fairs? And I mean, practically, maybe emotionally, financially, if you want to talk about that, but you don't have to.
So a lot of the lockdown, I couldn't actually go to my studio, because it was in someone else's garage and they were using it. And I technically couldn't then cross over with them. So I didn't make for, like 6 months or something. It was so long. And it was on and off between when the lockdowns were on and when they were off. so yeah, in that time, I actually did a lot of sewing. So I kind of just switched gears a little bit, but no selling happened. I didn't sell online at all. My work just kind of sat and waited. And in a way, that was a really good time. And in a way, it wasn't. It was, I had time to explore something that I hadn't explored before. And then, hadn't. And then when I got back into the studio, it was wonderful. Lockdown. Lockdown's something else to talk.
Yeah, no, that's great, Sarah.
Yeah.
I'll come to Liz's question now, which is a really good question. And she's just saying she loved the piece that you did for Truro. Can you explain a little bit more about your choice for glass and bronze to go with the plaster vessels, and perhaps maybe even the choice of plaster as well? So those materials, why specifically the 3 different materials?
Well, I mean, the main thing with the glass one was it had to hold water. And at the time I had been working in glass casting, just doing little bits and pieces, and had really enjoyed it. And it's a relatively unforgiving medium. Like if you make a mistake, like if you break it, that's kind of it. Like you have one kind of shot at that final piece. And I don't know, I love that. And I love how refined you could get, all of that. Like a glass piece can look so perfect. And I don't know, there's some level of precision that I have generally within me where things need to be straight and ordered and perfect, which drives me crazy sometimes. And glass can kind of get you there. So in that way, choosing something that could hold water and that could get that kind of like precision that I wanted, glass was really good. I had actually just done a bronze project as well before this, and thought actually ladle, yes, could work generally as a utensil, so that people would know, oh, I can use that to scoop the water. Like utensils are metal. That's a thing that I can use to interact with the piece. Like making it clear that it can be used, and so that people wouldn't come up to it and just stand there and look at it. That was a kind of important distinction. I wanted people to be able to, pick it up, use it, and then in terms of the plaster, it was that it needed to evaporate the water out again, and ceramics wouldn't work that well with that, especially not glazed. And I think there was one more question.
Yeah, from Owen, a question from Owen. Is there anything in the process of ceramics, particularly ceramics, that lends itself to reflective work?
Like
maybe in the making or the outcome,
like reflective work, like the cathedral one, like thinking, like reflection. I mean, the entire ceramics process, and a lot of people think this, like it's like therapy, and in a way it is. There's so much about throwing that is, the movements are small and quiet, and at least mine, the way that I work, every movement that I make on that piece of clay has to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be thought out, but it needs to be gentle but firm, and fast but slow. Like there's this balance, because if you are too fast on that piece, it won't work. But so there's it's the like tiny details of moving your hands and that process of you and the clay and the wheel. And I don't know that, yes, definitely aspects that are reflective. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah.
I hope that answers the question.
There's another question in from Rosie. She says, I wonder if the fact that the Nomas exhibition is unexplained reflects the unspoken nature of the topic of stillborn and child loss. She's just saying you speak so vulnerably and sensitively on the topic. And I was wondering, just added to that, if on the list that was in Truro Cathedral, if there was still people within that congregation? Did you get to meet anyone? The people that interacted, was there anyone you met where you were able to talk about it? Or you as an artist actually responding to the work, but meeting the people as well?
I absolutely think that stillbirth is not spoken about enough. When I went back to visit family in Canada the summer after having made that work, and my relatives were like, Sarah, that was beautiful. I had stillborn children that I, of course, would never have known about. And they were like, they didn't get to experience the piece. It was the fact that I had made it. And they were telling me this. And I was like, I never knew. And these are great aunts of mine. And like it's just, yeah. And of course, I mean, in some way it's like, of course I would never know, because why would I have talked about that as a child to them? But then it's like, well, why wouldn't I have? Those were people those were babies that, anyway. And in terms of the response to the people who actually were able to experience the piece, the tutors at the time at university had a book that people could write their responses in, not just to my piece, but to everyone who had, because all the other students were able to respond to various things in the cathedral. And people wrote in it that they had a time of quiet reflection, that they had loved that there was something that was available to them in a way. So yeah, it was well received in the cathedral and the people that visited it, it made me glad that I could have made something that they could have used, that would have helped them in some way process or memorialize or whatever.
Yeah. I think from our point of view, when Owen and I were chatting about this and chatting with you, Sarah, and realising that the interactive part was taken away, it almost added to that sense of this is something that we can consider but not interact with. That it added that layer of distance, which is encounter to that this should be something that should be engaged with, which we'd kind of come to terms with, recognizing that's what we were facing, and thinking, well, actually that conceptually adds a different layer to it. There's a question here from Heather as well. Do you find yourself influenced by other arts such as writing, text, music, film? Are there any other artists who have been a major influence?
Oh, this is where I'm absolutely terrible at. Other artists influencing me. Yes, definitely, absolutely. I mean, art. I mean, it's forever influenced by everything else, right? Impressionism, definitely. Scottish colorists, definitely, which I didn't realize were even a thing until I moved to Scotland. And then both John and I now are like, they're the best thing that ever happened. We love so much of their work. We'll go to every exhibition we can where their work is shown. And then this guy's actually a writer, and everyone's probably heard of him. And now I always forget if it's Arthur or Alfred. I'm pretty sure it's Arthur Wainwright. He did the lakes like guidebooks and beautiful drawings. So most recently, I saw his books, like in the last 6 months, I saw his books of the lakes, and then realized he did a Scottish mountain version. And I thought, and I had been drawing mountains on my pots for 3 years, and then saw his mountain drawings and was like, wow, like his drawings are incredible. And let me just see if I can pull them up. I'm still screen sharing. Beautiful drawings of mountains, like just incredibly detailed. And I'm not gonna draw like this, but they just totally, the way that I was drawing now has just, I don't know, been expanded because of seeing his drawings. So yeah, definitely, if you see my earlier work of mountains, they're a lot you wouldn't necessarily know that they're mountains. And now, like I have a pot here, I'll just show you. They're a lot more obviously like mountain drawings. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that question, Heather, just to get that insight as well from you, Sarah. So there's a question here from Sue. You mentioned working with clay can be therapeutic. Have you worked with others using clay maybe? I don't know if on clay, or is that something you would consider, like working with others? So just a bit of a background maybe to that question. So Sue works with bread dough in particular, but she'll work with others and people have bread dough and they're making using that material. So I think that's why Sue's asking that question in regards to clay and working with others. Yeah.
I haven't done. I think there's a lot of, I think I could, it's a difficult thing because I feel like now, especially, you have to be properly trained and properly certified and properly anything to be able to do anything with specific groups of people. But definitely clay is, I mean, sometimes it's a pain, but a lot of the time it is very, it has that, like Owen said, aspect of reflection that is wonderful. You can go into the studio and spend all day throwing and not necessarily know where the time's gone. Yeah, it definitely has that feeling. I mean, it does change a little bit when you're trying to make money. I will admit that it does change your work a bit and your mindset. And John and I, my husband and I, have tried to work really hard to kind of take that aspect out. And for now, that means having another job on the side so that we don't have to think about the pressure of having to make money on our work on a regular basis so that we can pay bills. But yeah, and that's been really helpful because it means when I go into the studio, I don't have to think I have to make 60 pots today, to sell. So anyway, yeah.
There's a couple of comments in there in terms of other influences, perhaps with Wainwright, with the I wonder if he was influenced kind of from Japanese artists. That was a comment from Adam, and then another comment from Heather there, which you can see in the chat. So I'm just watching time, and I don't know I think you're answering these questions so well, Sarah. It's just so insightful. We just really appreciate it. But we'll maybe take this as the last question, and then I'm going to hand over to Owen just to let you know what's happening. But yeah, the question from Ben, Be Still and Know, he says, is such a spiritual artwork, whether one is religious or not. In this way, it could also be received as a multi-faith or interfaith artwork in relation to processing grief and loss. Have you considered approaching any other churches or faith groups to host the artwork? And I wonder, since your art has been sitting in the box for the last, I was in chatting with John, and I don't know how, or I'd looked on your website and seen it, and John said, oh yeah, it's in the box in the attic. And then that process led to, well, could we show this at this, for this show? But I wonder if now there is, in light of what Shona said about Sands as well, if there is now an opportunity to, to take this work further and respond to Ben's question.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And like you said, it's not necessarily religious, and it just happened to be that it was in a cathedral because that's where, its original, place was. Like, it's very much reflective to a specific person internally, and that's how they will process their grief or their memory and all of that. It is exactly, it doesn't have to be a Christian piece, and so I've thought of exhibiting it in many places. The main thing comes down to time and energy and deciding. And right now, working a part-time job and doing my ceramics, it's a lot to juggle. And so it's meant that everything that I made at university has gone up in the loft.
Mhm.
And, you know, I go in the studio and I just make what I make now. This is why I was so happy when Chloe was like, it gets to come down from the loft and be somewhere. And if this is an opening to it being elsewhere, that's wonderful. Because, you know, I'd love for it to not sit in my loft doing nothing. So yeah, I would definitely consider approaching other churches or faith groups, or like Sands, where it's
it might be, Sarah, that there's others here, or you know, who could take that on, you know, the work on of that for you. So you never know. I'm going to hand over to Owen, and maybe while Owen's chatting, Sarah, you could put your website in the chat, a link to that in the chat, and your Instagram account as well, because I'm aware that you know, people can't go onto your website and there's not a link to buy anything, but I'm going to encourage people to buy your work. But I think it might be getting in touch with you. So if you want to put your email address in there as well, and if anyone's interested. But I'll hand over to you, Owen. That's it.
Any better?
That's good.
Yeah, just a massive thanks, Sarah. Thank you for what you've shared today and what you've done. It just means a great deal to us at Nomas, and I am really glad that it's not in a box and it's in a window. I was looking at it, and actually being behind the glass, kind of, as Cully said, it changes the reading slightly, but it's still of course, it's intended to be interactive, but there's something when you see it almost like little figures, all these little characters, unique pieces that are within the collection. We've tried to show some photos here for folks who've not been along Ward Road, alongside your statement here. So I won't quote any of the statement, but hopefully it gives a sense for folk. And I really loved it at night. Cully had taken photos during the day and in the evening, and somehow it was even more stark and more emotional to see it in the subdued light. And you get a sense of sort of isolation and being an observer on this. And that for me was, of course, it's meant to be interactive, but as an observer, I couldn't help seeing it as little people, which of course is what you were after. And I'll just go through these. And here's a sense of those together in the windows for people that haven't been there in person. So thank you so much. I don't really want to talk too much, actually, given how it is installed. And here it is in the daylight. And something for me in terms of even the softness of it, the monochromatic quality, makes a sort of statement by its quietness, I think. And I've been really struck by that just looking at the piece. So we are delighted. You know, this is our 8th show this year. It's all been the subject of care. And of course, reflecting on the incarnation, we've never done it by its absence before, you know, and the consequences you think of the kind of biblical story, if it had failed, you know, in terms of human history. It's just a thought that never occurred to me before. And of course, God entering into flesh and being aware of human suffering is just such a comfort for so many people, even when it's unexplained, when people lose children so young. So it's just a very poignant note to finish a whole year of curating theme for care. So we're very, very grateful to you for trusting us. I was really struck by showing something by its absence, and that negative part, I think, is something really interesting. And in terms even clay vessels, and it's a theme. And when you said you've got one shot at making a piece, I thought, wow, how profound is that in terms of a human life as well? When my mum says it's the mums that should get the birthday card, not the kids, because the mums did all the work. And so that idea of making a piece and making a human being, and then of course remembering the mysterious part when doesn't come to pass the way we expect. And then of course what you were saying about the mountains in your work and the Japanese reference is definitely there. And just clay and rock being these timeless materials. But modernism and industry has sort of taken away a little bit of that knowledge, I think, from humanity, wouldn't that be a much more embedded process? So now it's made in a factory, and ceramics is no longer an integrated part so much of ordinary life. And of course, the biblical references in the title, but just Potter and the Clay and Treasures of Jars of Clay. For anybody that's interested in reading them up, please have a look at these kind of scripture references that are there. And then as you were talking, I just couldn't help thinking of this lovely book by Edmund de Waal. And of course, he's a ceramicist, and he inherited these netsuke, these Japanese tiny, tiny characters, and they were inheritance for him. And he traces the origins of them all back through his own family line, through persecution and the diaspora of the Jews through the 20th century. And it's a fascinating story, but it's all embedded in clay. And it's all about the touch and clay. And when he speaks about, when you were saying spending the whole day just throwing to get it just right, and this idea of this perfect edge, and he speaks so beautifully of that. And he was talking about language as he traced his own history through to Central Europe and the kind of the Baltic, the Black Sea. But with languages, you can move from one social situation to another. With languages, you're at home anywhere if you have the ability to say them. But he was talking about objects as well, and how objects are handed on is all about storytelling. And somehow you're enabling somebody else to tell the story of their grief. Your auntie's over in Canada. That object somehow channels that. And what a responsibility as an artist. You're just doing that thing of trying to get the throw just right, or the shape just right. And somehow that object is embodying something so beautiful, which is beyond the object itself. And so I loved that book. It's a very moving book, but I loved your show, and it was even more moving. So thank you so much. And thanks for everybody that supported Nomas this year.
Thank you, Owen. Thanks, Owen, for for those thoughts and bringing all that together. I thought that was great. It feels odd to kind of say that's the end, and then just blank screen. Normally, if we were in person, we'd say, right, let's go down to the George Orwell pub and have a drink together and a wee chat. But let's maybe just unmute and just do a wee round of applause for Sarah, so she can hear us. Really appreciate it, Sarah, just for your honesty and just for taking these questions so well.